We're going crazy for you, and I know that the people have been watching you, your audition, and people love you. It's amazing.
This is my big dream, to get there.
To be here.
The second act, still in it, is TV Unit.
Never shone on me.
Picture this. A simple fisherman from a tiny village in the Philippines walks onto one of the world's biggest stages. His hands are rough from pulling nets. His face is weathered by the sun. But when he opens his mouth to sing, millions of people around the world stop what they're doing and listen. That fisherman is Roland, and his story on America's Got Talent touched hearts everywhere. But here's what they didn't tell you on TV. The real story is so much deeper, so much more incredible, that will completely change how you see this amazing man. What you saw on television was just a tiny piece of Roland's journey. Behind that powerful voice and humble smile lies a story of struggle, dreams, and surprises that will blow your mind. So sit back and get ready, because we're about to dive into the parts of Roland Abante's story that America's Got Talent never showed you. Let's start from the very beginning. Roland wasn't born in some big city with music schools and fancy recording studios. No, his story begins in Santander, a small fishing town at the tip of Cebu province in the Philippines. This place is so small that if you blink while looking at a map, you might miss it completely. But sometimes the most amazing stories come from the smallest places. Roland was the youngest of 7 children in his family. Being the baby of the family meant he had to learn how to speak up early if he wanted to be heard. His parents weren't rich. They didn't have fancy jobs or a big house with expensive furniture. But what they gave their children was something money can't buy. They taught them how to work hard, how to be strong when life gets tough, and how to never give up on their dreams. In Santander, the ocean wasn't just something pretty to look at. It was how families survived. Roland learned to swim before he could even tie his own shoes. That's not a joke. When you grow up by the sea, the water becomes part of who you are. The ocean was his playground, his teacher, and later, his workplace. Roland's childhood home was as simple as it gets. The walls were made of bamboo, and the roof was made from palm leaves. The floor creaked every time someone walked across it. But even though the house was small and simple, it was filled with something special. Love, laughter, and music. On many nights, you could hear karaoke singing coming from their house, loud enough for the neighbors 3 doors down to enjoy. Maybe that's where Roland first fell in love with music. Those family karaoke nights, where everyone took turns singing their favorite songs, might have planted the first seed of music in his heart. Little did anyone know that this little boy singing along to old songs would one day make the whole world cry with his voice. As Roland grew up, life started demanding more from him. In families like his, everyone has to help out. Roland didn't complain or make excuses. He stepped up and became a fisherman, just like so many men in his town. Every morning, while most people were still sleeping, Roland would wake up before the sun came up. He would take his small wooden boat out into the ocean, hoping and praying for a good catch. Fishing isn't easy work. You never know if you'll catch enough fish to feed your family, or make enough money to pay the bills. Every day was like rolling dice. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But Roland never gave up. He couldn't give up because his family was counting on him. But fishing wasn't his only job. Roland also worked as a motorcycle taxi driver, called a hable driver in the Philippines. He would weave through narrow, bumpy dirt roads, taking people from one place to another on his motorbike. It was hot, tiring work that meant long hours under the blazing sun. Most people would come home from work like this, too exhausted to do anything else. But not Roland. Even after these long, hard days, he would still find energy to sing. You see, for Roland, music wasn't just a hobby. It was like medicine for his soul. After a day of hard work, when his muscles ached and his skin was burned by the sun, singing made everything better. It was his escape from the tough parts of life. In the Philippines, karaoke isn't just entertainment. It's a way of life. Almost every neighborhood has karaoke machines, and people love to gather around and take turns singing. Roland would grab the microphone not because he wanted to become famous, but simply because singing made him happy. He had no idea that these fun karaoke sessions were actually training his voice for something much bigger. Roland's voice was special, even back then. It was rich and full of emotion. When he sang, people stopped their conversations and listened, not in fancy concert halls or expensive restaurants, but in small corner stores, family parties, and town festivals. Slowly, people started to notice. They would turn their heads and ask, "Who is that singing?" Every Sunday, Roland would sing in his local church choir, dressed in his simple clothes. He would sing hymns that seemed to float through the stained glass windows and touch the hearts of everyone sitting in the wooden pews. At first, he was shy and tried to blend in with the other singers. But gradually, people began to notice his voice standing out from the group. His confidence started to grow, and he began to believe that maybe, just maybe, his voice was truly special. Roland started entering local singing contests around his town. He didn't always win, but when he did, the prize money meant everything to him. Sometimes it was just a bag of rice or a few hundred pesos, but it wasn't really about the money. It was about something much more important. It was proof that other people believed in his talent too. Each small victory made him wonder if singing could be more than just something he did for fun. But even with all this local recognition, Roland never dreamed of singing on a world stage. When your daily life involves catching fish at sunrise and driving passengers around town in the afternoon, big dreams can feel impossible. His goals were simple and humble. Take care of his family, stay grounded, and keep singing whenever he could. Fame wasn't on his mind. Feeding his loved ones was what mattered most. Maybe that's exactly why his story touches so many hearts. Roland never chased the spotlight. He was just a good man doing his best to take care of the people he loved. But sometimes, when you're not looking for fame, fame comes looking for you. Then something incredible happened that changed everything. In 2014, someone recorded Roland singing "To Love Somebody," the beautiful song that Michael Bolton made famous, which was originally by the Bee Gees. But this wasn't professional recording in some fancy studio. It was just Roland, singing from his heart, pouring his soul into every single word of song. There were no bright lights, no backup dancers, no fancy editing. Just a man with an amazing voice and pure emotion. That simple video exploded across the internet like wildfire. People from all over the world started sharing it, commenting on it, and crying over it. Before anyone knew what was happening, the video had been watched over 7 million times on YouTube alone. 7 million. Can you imagine? One day you're a fisherman singing in your neighborhood, and the next day, millions of people around the world know your voice. People everywhere were asking the same questions. Who is this man? Where has this incredible voice been hiding? How is it possible that someone this talented was unknown? The video proved something beautiful about the internet. Sometimes, real talent doesn't need expensive marketing or fancy production. Sometimes, pure emotion and a beautiful voice are enough to touch millions of hearts. Roland's hometown was overjoyed. His neighbors and friends rallied behind him, sharing his video with pride and cheering him on like he was family. And to them, he really was family. His success wasn't just about one person making it big. It was about their whole community being recognized. His talent became a symbol of hope for everyone who had ever felt invisible or forgotten. Word about Roland spread so fast that even Hollywood noticed. Talk show host Ellen DeGeneres reportedly invited him to appear on her show. Can you believe that? One minute you're singing in your small town, and the next minute, one of the most famous people in America wants to meet you. It must have felt like a dream. Roland was also invited to perform on ASAP, one of the biggest variety shows in the Philippines. There, he got to sing alongside Arnel Pineda, the lead singer of the famous rock band Journey. For a simple fisherman from Cebu, sharing a stage with such a well-known performer was incredibly exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time. But behind all the viral success and media attention, Roland was quietly fighting a battle inside his mind. You know that little voice that sometimes tells you you're not good enough? The one that whispers doubts even when everyone else is cheering for you? Roland knew that voice very well. Even as amazing opportunities started coming his way, the thought of auditioning for America's Got Talent filled him with fear and uncertainty. He called appearing on AGT his big dream, but just thinking about it made him emotional. In interviews, he talked about feeling torn between different emotions. He was grateful for all the attention, but also scared. He was excited about the possibilities, but also overwhelmed by the pressure. After all, who was he to dream so big? He was just a fisherman from a tiny town that most people had never heard of. This is where his family became his greatest strength. His wife and son were his constant sources of encouragement. Every single day, they would talk to him, encourage him, and lift him up when he felt shaky or unsure. Roland once said that being an entertainer is especially hard when you're far from home and the people who love you most. But his family's voices, their faith in him, became the fuel that gave him courage to keep going. His wife believed in his talent with her whole heart. She never doubted that he could achieve great things. His son looked at him like he was already a hero, even before the world knew his name. What stronger motivation could anyone ask for? When Roland started to doubt himself, they reminded him of what he was capable of. When he hesitated, they gently pushed him forward with love and support. So when Roland finally gathered the courage to step onto that America's Got Talent stage, it wasn't just his own dream coming true. It was a dream of every person who had ever believed in him, every viewer who had shared his viral video, every family member who had stayed up late just to remind him that he was good enough, every neighbor who had cheered him on from the very beginning. But what the television cameras didn't show was just how overwhelming and scary this whole experience was for Roland. When he first stepped off the airplane in America, it was like landing on a completely different planet. Everything around him was new and strange. The tall buildings, the busy streets, the sound of sirens, the constant rush of people everywhere. It was so different from the quiet fishing village in Cebu where he had spent his whole life. For millions of viewers, they saw Roland on AGT for just a few minutes. But what they didn't see was the incredible emotional, physical, and mental journey that happened behind the scenes. This wasn't just a singing competition for Roland. It was the first time he had ever left his country. The first time he had ever been on an airplane. The first time he had seen buildings taller than palm trees. People close to the production say that Roland had never even owned a passport before this trip. So everything was brand new and sometimes scary. The long flight across the Pacific Ocean, trying to navigate airport security in a language he wasn't completely comfortable speaking, figuring out which gate to go to, which escalator to take, even feeling an escalator move under his feet for the first time. All of these things that most of us take for granted were completely new experiences for him. Los Angeles, with its endless traffic, massive buildings, and fast-talking people, must have felt like walking onto a movie set. Even his hotel room, with its soft pillows, mini bar, and fancy telephone, was unlike anything he had ever experienced. These were things he had only seen in movies. And now he was living in the middle of it all. But even with all this culture shock and nervousness, Roland carried himself with quiet dignity and strength. Yes, he was amazed by everything around him, but he wasn't overwhelmed to the point of giving up. He knew exactly why he was there, and he wasn't going to let fear stop him from achieving his dream. Here's something else the TV audience never saw. Roland didn't speak much English. Sure, he understood some basic words and phrases from school back home, but he wasn't confident enough to have full conversations in English. So throughout his entire time on AGT, he depended heavily on a translator, not just during his audition, but also during rehearsals, backstage conversations, and when talking with the judges and crew members. But here's the beautiful thing about Roland's performances. The moment he opened his mouth to sing, language barriers disappeared completely. His voice became a universal language that everyone could understand. The emotions he put into every note, every word, needed no translation. When he sang, it didn't matter what language you spoke or where you came from. You could feel what he was feeling. Getting to that stage wasn't easy, though. Behind every beautiful note you heard was hours and hours of practice. The cameras never showed the nights Roland spent going over his songs, trying to perfect every detail. He worked with vocal coaches, constantly rehearsed, and even asked his translator to help him understand the feedback the judges gave to other contestants. He wanted to learn everything he could. Despite his calm appearance on stage, Roland was fighting self-doubt behind the scenes. He worried about whether Americans would connect with his voice. He wondered if he could touch the hearts of people who didn't speak his native language. These questions kept him awake at night, but instead of letting these worries defeat him, he turned that nervous energy into fuel for his performances. Just before walking onto the AGT stage, Roland had a special ritual. He would find a quiet corner backstage, close his eyes, and take deep, slow breaths. No pep talks from coaches. No pacing back and forth. Just a silence and prayer. Maybe he was thinking about his family back home. Maybe he was remembering all the people in his village who believed in him. Whatever was going through his mind, by the time he stood in front of those judges, the shy fisherman from Cebu had transformed into something amazing. When the judges responded with such warm praise and standing ovations, Roland's surprise was completely genuine. He wasn't used to being the center of attention. He didn't come from a place where applause and recognition were common. So when Heidi Klum stood up and hugged him and Simon Cowell did the same, it hit him harder than any wave he'd ever faced while fishing. Roland later told a crew member that those hugs weren't just about his singing. They felt like a message from the world saying, "We see you. We hear you. You matter." For someone who had spent most of his life feeling invisible, those few seconds of recognition and acceptance held decades of emotional meaning. How often does someone from such a humble background get embraced by people they've only ever seen on television? It wasn't just approval of his talent. It was approval of his entire life journey. That night, as Roland returned to his hotel room, quietly holding on to the memory of that incredible moment, something inside him had changed forever. He no longer felt small or unimportant. For the first time in his life, the world had looked his way and smiled back. The spotlight hadn't just found him. It had embraced him like an old friend. But what happened after the cameras stopped rolling? What do you do when the applause fades, the audience goes home, and you're alone in a quiet hotel room, forever changed by what just happened? Well, Roland's life after AGT became a whole new adventure that was just as amazing as his television appearances. When Roland returned home to the Philippines after his emotional performances on America's Got Talent, he didn't come back as someone who had lost a competition. He came back as someone who had found something much more valuable. He had found his true voice, his purpose, and a whole new understanding of what he was meant to do with his life. Many people expected Roland to quietly return to his old life of fishing and driving his motorcycle taxi. They thought he would just slip back into the background and let his moment of fame become a nice memory. But Roland had different plans. He wasn't about to let this opportunity slip away. Instead of retreating, he decided to move forward with bigger dreams than ever. His first major step was planning a concert tour, not just around his hometown or nearby cities, but across the United States and Canada. Can you imagine? Just months after saying goodbye to the AGT stage, Roland found himself performing on stages across North America. In Woodridge, Virginia, at a restaurant called Pine Kitchen, the room was packed with Filipino-American fans. Many of them came just hoping to hear that voice that had touched their hearts on television. Some said they didn't expect to get emotional, but when Roland started singing, they couldn't help but cry. His voice was different in person. More real, more powerful, more moving. The tour continued to Chicago in May 2025, where his show at Asian restaurant was promoted as a once-in-a-lifetime experience. People lined up for hours just to get tickets. Why? Because they understood what many others were just beginning to learn. Roland wasn't just a singer who could hit the right notes. He was a storyteller who could touch your soul with every song. The final stop of his tour in Tampa, Florida, was more than just another concert. It was a celebration of how far he had come. Roland didn't just sing that night. He spoke from his heart to a crowd that had followed his journey from his very first AGT audition to that very moment. He thanked everyone who had supported him, the producers, the fans, and yes, even the critics who had pushed him to become better and believe in himself even more. But Roland's story after AGT wasn't just about music. Something else was quietly taking shape that showed just how much his heart had grown. Inspired by his deep faith and his desire to stay connected to his roots, Roland began developing a line of merchandise. But this wasn't just about selling t-shirts and coffee mugs to make money. It was about sharing a piece of his heart with the world. He named his brand Bunnet, which was his childhood nickname back home. The brand became more than just a business. It became a symbol of humble beginnings, unwavering faith, and the beautiful blend of culture and spirituality that made Roland who he was. His merchandise started small, with just a few items available at his concert venues. But as more and more people wanted to buy something that connected them to Roland's story, he expanded the line. Friends say he personally looked at every design detail. Why? Because he didn't want to sell something just for the sake of making money. He wanted people to wear his shirts or use his products and feel encouraged, uplifted, and reminded of their own worth and dreams. From baseball caps embroidered with Bible verses to shirts that carried inspiring phrases in Tagalog, his brand connected people in ways even Roland hadn't expected. It wasn't just merchandise. It was a way for people to carry a piece of hope and inspiration with them wherever they went. What makes Roland's story so special isn't just the success he achieved. It's how unexpected all of it was. Who could have imagined that a man who once battled rough ocean waves with fishing nets and drove long hours in the hot sun would one day be performing on stages in foreign countries and have his name on products that inspired people around the world? But perhaps the most beautiful part of Roland's transformation is that he never changed who he was deep inside. He remained the same soft-spoken, humble, kind man he had always been. The only difference was that now he had a microphone in one hand and a message of hope in the other. Roland's journey proved something powerful and inspiring. You don't need to win the biggest prize to win people's hearts. Sometimes, what seems like the end of one chapter is really just the beginning of an even more important mission. People aren't just following Roland because of his beautiful voice. They're following him because of his courage, his faith, and the way he reminds all of us that no dream is too big, no past too humble, and no voice too quiet to make a difference in the world. But Roland's plans for the future are even more incredible than what he's already accomplished. Right now, back in his beloved home province of Cebu, Roland is quietly working on something that will change many lives. He's establishing a music foundation that will give opportunities to underprivileged young people who have musical talents, but no way to develop them. Think about it. How many amazingly talented kids are out there right now, singing in their neighborhoods, dreaming of something bigger, but having no idea how to make it happen? Roland remembers exactly what that felt like. He remembers the pain of being overlooked and the incredible joy of finally being seen and heard. So for him, giving back isn't just a nice thing to do. It's personal, it's necessary, and it's happening. But Roland isn't just building an institution and walking away. He's personally going out to small towns across the Philippines, towns that never get visited by talent scouts or music industry professionals. Roland spends time with young singers there, listening to their voices and, even more importantly, listening to their stories. He's become a mentor and an example of what's possible. Slowly but surely, something incredible is happening. Young singers are looking at Roland and saying, "If he could do it, maybe I can too." Can you imagine what it means to a child from a fishing village to suddenly believe that their voice matters, that their dreams are valid, that they don't have to be born into privilege to be heard? That's the real ripple effect of Roland's journey. What started as one man's personal dream has grown into a movement that's inspiring the next generation of dreamers. He's not just giving advice. He's giving hope. He's giving belief. He's showing kids from humble backgrounds that they don't have to stay invisible forever. Roland has also started focusing on something deeply personal. He's writing original songs that tell his own story. These aren't just pretty melodies with nice words. These are raw, honest songs that capture the real truth of his life, the poverty he lived through, the heartbreaks he endured, the quiet prayers he whispered when nobody was listening, the long days of waiting and wondering if his dreams would ever come true, and the miracles he never saw coming. His new music doesn't try to impress people with flashy production or complicated arrangements. Instead, it speaks directly to the soul of anyone who has ever felt invisible, forgotten, or overlooked. It's music for people who understand what it means to struggle, to hope, and to keep believing even when everything seems impossible. Through his lyrics and melodies, Roland is giving voice to the quiet parts of his past. By sharing his own struggle so honestly, he's helping others see that their difficulties can have meaning too, that their pain can be turned into something beautiful, that their lowest moments don't have to be the end of their story. They can be the beginning of something amazing. Roland's music foundation, his mentorship of young singers, his honest songwriting, they all point in the same direction, toward a world where more people get the chance to be heard, just like he finally was, where talent isn't limited by geography or circumstances, where dreams aren't reserved for the lucky few, but available to anyone willing to work hard and never give up. So when people talk about Roland Abante today, it's no longer just about that viral video or his powerful AGT performances. It's about his heart, his character, and the many lives he's quietly changing every single day. Because in the end, isn't that the greatest kind of success? The kind that echoes far beyond any stage, touches hearts long after the applause fades, and creates ripples of hope that spread farther than any single voice could ever reach? Roland Abante's story reminds us that heroes don't always wear capes or come from famous families. Sometimes they're fishermen who sing to the ocean, dreamers who refuse to give up, and humble souls who use their gifts to lift others up. Sometimes the most extraordinary people come from the most ordinary places, and sometimes the most powerful voices belong to those who almost stayed silent forever. If Roland's incredible journey has touched your heart the way it's touched millions of others around the world, please take a moment to hit that like button and let us know in the comments below. What part of his story inspired you the most? Have you ever had a dream that seemed impossible, but you kept believing anyway? Share your thoughts with our amazing community, because stories like Roland's remind us that we're all connected by hope, dreams, and the courage to keep singing even when no one seems to be listening. And don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell, so you never miss another inspiring story that proves dreams really do come true for those brave enough to chase them.